out, and Robert.
This meeting is here at 6.
Yep, full screen.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Who's chair?
That's Crystal, but she.
If she doesn't come, Martha's vice chair. She can start the meeting. We got 3 more minutes, so.
So should we do introductions before?
Oh, we can do it when we start the meeting officially.
Do we have to vote on anything? Because,
No, I would think we don't need a quorum.
okay,
Oh.
Yeah, we're not voting anything. Harold is just, this is an informational meeting.
Just hanging.
Harold,
Don't we to approve the city budget tonight?
no, we're not approving budget. That's one of our pay grades, not the messenger. Oh, we do, yeah, we don't have to, I mean, if we do have a quorum, we can, but I'm not, we can do it next month too. I'm not too worried about the minutes. We just need one more person for quorum anyway, so as long as Katie says she was joining online, as long as she joins, then we're good. And I'm assuming Robert's coming, it's up to you. And the door's open for Rob.
Yeah.
Okay.
He usually shows up.
If you do it in the app, can you leave and join in the app?
Yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah, it's easier. You have to leave and then join in the app.
Oh,
There you are. You're in the room.
There we go, we're back.
okay, I'll get out. Everybody's back in. Sorry about that.
All right.
Okay, now we can talk about August 14th meeting and get that as approved.
Okay, so no edits to the meeting.
Yeah, I'll move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second? I second. All right, all in favor?
All right, Martha, okay, you okay with that? Yeah, okay,
Okay, perfect.
all right.
Then, now that we have approved those minutes, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is a discussion about the 2026 budget funding. And I'll go ahead and take it away.
So this is going to be high level overview. This is what I presented to the council when I gave them our charter requires that before the 1st of September, I have to provide them with a balanced budget. So this is what I gave to them on the 26th of August. We have been in more detailed budget conversations. We've gone through 2 weeks of detailed budget conversations, and that's where we dig into the funds and talk about really what's going on. So obviously we look at the council priorities when we're building the budget. In most cases, when we have excess revenue, this is where we really start looking at how we're allocating those dollars. And then in this, so you can see that we focus core services first. We move into equity, safety, sustainability, and then we start moving into these other categories. The bulk of our expenses really fall in core services. As an overview, it's a balanced budget. We try to look at all of the issues that the council is bringing forward. The headwinds coming into this budget were significant, and they were showing themselves in many different areas. This gives you a sense of that. So our proposed operating budget is $520 million. It's a 9.85% increase. That's all 60 plus funds. So that is not just the general fund, which is a very significant distinction because in the fund accounting model, we have some fairly strict rules with enterprise funds that we have to follow. And basically we can't take, there's a lot of legal decisions and rules. So we can't take money from, let's say, the electric fund and push it into the general fund. And there's been a number of court decisions that have hammered cities for when they do that. We can charge actual expenses through our ATF process, which is administrative transfer fees and actual cost that the general fund is incurring on behalf of those enterprise funds. But we can't just put money over. So for example, on the administrative transfer fee, one of the things that we do is, so like my time, for example, I have a spreadsheet and I have to show how much time I'm spending in each one of those areas. And then my cost is actually allocated out to those enterprise funds. Some key highlights, no tax rate increase in this. We looked at continuing with our market competitive employee compensation, some infrastructure funds. You're going to see that primarily in the enterprise funds. And then we use fund balance of about 43.8 billion. And then a significant piece was our level 1 expenses. I put this in, so we have several projects that are currently in development. So think in the world of like economic development, housing, things like that, that have the potential to significantly change our budget, but we just aren't at a level of certainty to where we could count on that. I've never put this in before, but these projects are so big that if we're able to get those over the finish line, it's going to change the budget in terms of how we look at 26 and beyond. So I wanted to give a bit of a hedge to the council and to the community, because what I didn't want is to talk about how this is a really tight budget year and then come down the road and say, oh, we've got this project. And people were thinking I'm sandbagging them. And it's just, we don't have certainty at this point. Literally, I spent most of the day today on one of them. This is what we're going to kind of go over. And then it's not working. Can you back me up? What are you driving to?
Yeah,
What do you
they
mean?
have
I'm not-
arrow.
You want me to share on my computer?
I got it. So when we look at our revenue picture, a lot of volatility in sales and use tax, and where it's really showing itself is actually in use tax. Our sales tax up until the month before we had to really start finalizing, our numbers have been up for most months, I think around 2.8%. But our use tax is actually down 20%. And, but then we got the last sales tax number and that was down as well. Use tax, when you think about use tax, it's things related to what companies purchase, equipment, machinery, things like that. The most significant part of use tax is actually directly related to construction. And we have a category that we call lumber. It's not just lumber, it's any construction material. That's typically what's driving use tax when we're looking at our budget. And what we're really seeing is that that is really just directly impacted by uncertainty in the market. And a lot of people talk about the tariffs. It's interesting when I talk to CEOs from private industry, the tariffs are in play. If they knew what the tariffs were going to be, they can tend to manage through that. It's the fact that there's so much uncertainty in tariffs, there's uncertainty in interest rates. The lending institutions are really being conservative in terms of issuing debt on projects. And so all of that uncertainty has really just slowed down use tax coming into our system. Not unique to Longmont, it's actually something that we're seeing across the entire state. Obviously, you've seen that the state of Colorado has had to deal with this. And so we held use tax flat from 25 to 26. So we did not project any growth in that category. I met with Boulder County city managers yesterday. We're all doing the same thing. The property tax legislation had a fairly significant impact on our revenue. And because when they reduced the residential and commercial ratios, what it really did for us coming into this budget cycle is reduce what we would typically see in growth on reappraisal years every 2 years. They do the reappraisal cycle. This year, and there may be a number later, so if I repeat it, I'll just skip over it later. We only saw additional growth of 1.2 million in property tax this year. In a typical reappraisal cycle, that number is in excess of $3 million. So the residential ratios really were a problem. One of the things that we actually did in last year's budget is we took $2.6 million of property tax that was in the system, and we actually treated it as one-time funds, knowing that this year we were probably going to see an additional headwind. Punchline, had we not have done that, we would have been cutting budgets significantly. That's actually, I think, part of what helped us this year when you see what other cities are going through, and that they fully allocated property tax, and then when they got their numbers, it came in lower than their projections, and that added to deficits that you're seeing in other communities. We actually had some recreation revenue enhancements. Our traffic safety cameras, people, when we originally presented this, said, well, you're just doing it to generate revenue. We're not. We're actually doing it because we have a problem in our community with speeding and people running red lights. And so just based on what, we had a delayed implementation this year, but based on what we're seeing now, as these cameras are being placed into service, we actually increased the revenue estimate. Ideally for me, it would be zero. Unfortunately, it's not. And then we have water rate increases, and we also increased the next slide franchise fee to 4%. That does go into the general fund. And we're doing that because when we started Next Slide, we didn't implement a franchise fee because it was in its infancy and we needed it to become more stable from a financial perspective based on how we issued the debt. They're really stable at this point. So now we're treating them like we do the other utilities. So that was a bit of a tailwind coming into this budget.
So can I just ask a quick question? So the revenue from the traffic lights, do they cover the cost of putting them up?
Yes, because the way the process does, they take a percentage of that off the top, and then that's the revenue we're projected on top of.
Okay, thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
I talked a little bit about some of the budget challenges earlier. Obviously, the economic environment is in complete chaos right now. I can tell you about any number of stories where businesses are really contracting their spending at this point, waiting to get certainty and in a number of areas. When you look at the broader economy, we actually had a decline in marijuana revenue. So the state would traditionally give us 10% of the revenue generated in their system. As they were trying to balance the budget in their process, they reduced that from 10% to 3%. A lot of development revenue pressures, which is really just related to the economic environment, what I talked about earlier. We had significant collective bargaining increases last year, and we had a 2-year agreement. And so we had to build that into the budget. We approach collective bargaining like we do all of our staff, which is paying them market, and they were significantly behind market. And so what we're finding right now, both in police and fire, is there's just a lot of challenges in hiring positions. And so getting behind market is not a great thing for us. So we were really focused on trying to get them to market last year and then do our best to stay as close to market this year as we possibly can. And behind all of this is when you look at what some of the other cities are doing, when they say we have a $20 million gap, and Denver's probably the best example in that they cut about 1,000 positions. 800 of those positions were unfunded, and then I think they cut approximately 200 that had people in them. We don't have the ability to do that because we run a really lean organization. So anytime we would have to go in and make cuts, it is programmatic cuts coming along with it. So as I say to the council, if you look at our budget and you look at other communities, you're seeing bone and muscle with us, and other communities have a fair amount of fat associated with it. Not in a bad way, it's just we've always been really focused on being lean and efficient in what we're doing. And that really kind of shows itself in our staffing levels. So everything from public safety to purchasing, when we compare ourselves from a staffing perspective, it is not uncommon for us to be double-digit percentage points below most of our most similar communities to our size. And that's really rooted in trying to use the revenue that we get from our community to the best of our ability and not over-collect revenue, because we understand the impact that has on people living in our community.
Do we experience higher rates of burnout and wanting consequences from that?
You know what? Our turnover rate's actually really good. And so when we tend to see turnover show itself, a lot of times it's from outward pressures. Like we saw significant turnover in police. And a lot of that was actually due to changes in state law. And like when they lost qualified immunity and some other things, the entire state was seeing that shift because they were moving to other locations. I think, they're also impacted by national conversations. we tend to see there is some burnout in public facing positions. And it's not necessarily that they're leaving, it's hard for us to fill them. And I think that's just something that we're seeing industry wide right now in terms of government, in that the tone has changed dramatically and how people communicate with each other. So we're actually seeing a dwindling pipeline of people wanting to move into government positions. And when we open positions, those that are more rear facing, we have strong applicants. Those that tend to be more forward facing, dealing directly with the community, the smaller applicant pools. And it's showing itself from top to bottom. I have never seen as many open city manager positions in my career as I've seen over the last 4 years. And it's like weekly I get headhunters reaching out.
And you're not leaving us,
No.
right? Okay, all right.
But I say that because it's not in any one category. It's like frustrated. And I have a lot of friends, mentors that are like, I'm retired. This work is just getting way too hard. And I think it's just because everything is a fight. And nationally, people are losing sight of community and focusing on personal interests. And I just think that is wearing people out. Part of where we focus on turnover is really when we talk about the organizational culture and what we want to achieve, because you can pay everybody we could be the highest paid employer in the world. But if our culture is not what we want it, people won't stay and they won't join us. So we spend a lot of time on organizational culture. And that's when we then lean into things like flexible work environments, really being open to
Family-friendly practices.
yeah, how you work from, when can you work from home? How can you work from home? And it's as basic as I created a rule that said, if somebody wants a flexible work environment, the first answer is never no.
Yeah.
Sit down and talk to them. Now, the answer may be no, but then we have to clearly explain why we can't. There's just certain positions that you have to be there. And so it's really leaning into that conversation with the organization. This starts giving you a sense, these are only our major funds that we have in play. And so I talked about having 60 different funds. So you can see that the general fund is our second largest fund that we have. About 77% of the general fund is personnel costs. Versus when you look at the electric and broadband fund, and specifically on the electric side, the majority of that is actually what we pay Platte River for power. So it's an expense and a revenue. And so their personnel expense is lower, and it shows itself in each fund in a different way based on what are the capital expenses. So when you look at water, street, and sewer fund, heavy capital, same for fleet, not as much personnel. The public safety fund is really heavy personnel. And you'll see me kind of talk about, we had some significant issues with the public safety fund this year. Generally, when we come into the budget, we look at what are level 1, level 2 expenses at one time. And this year, we're probably thinking about next year creating another category of level 1.5. So level 1, basically think of must-pay bills. So when you're at home, what do you have to pay? You have to pay insurance, mortgage, rent, those types of things, and groceries, and you're seeing kind of what entails in that. There are some personnel expenses that will show themselves based on job audits and things like that. And some of those will flow into level 2. Level 2 is really anything that's enhancing or expanding or creating services. And then one time it's a combination of things that are generally truly one-time expense. I think one of the things we purchased is Open Counter, which is a software system to streamline the permitting process. It's a one-time expense. Sometimes we will use one-time expenses on term expenses or term projects to see whether or not it's going to work, knowing and being very clear that when the money runs out, whatever it is, stops, or we have pulled it into ongoing funding. We're pretty focused on that because when I first got here 13 years ago, when they were dealing with the 2008 budget, in the Great Recession, they pushed a lot of ongoing expenses and utilized one-time funds. And what that really created is a budget reset moment for us where we had about $4 million of ongoing expenses that were in one time.
Wow.
And we had to, as new money was coming in, we had to transition that into those expenses so that we could continue doing what we were doing. In this budget, we didn't fund any level 2 requests in the general fund or the public safety fund. We added 12 new positions. You can see they're all in the enterprise funds. These are fixed term positions that are funded by one-time funds in order to get some work that we're doing with Salesforce kicked off and to really take the time to determine what we actually need. So where it touches your world is the transition that we just made to CareNet, which is a Salesforce system that is connecting all of our social service groups, mental health groups together, so that as we're working with people in the community, they're connecting to each other. We had a system that wasn't operating as effectively as we could, because what we found is someone may be working with senior services, but they were also working with legal board, and they may be interacting with other departments, and they never knew that. And so what ended up happening is we were actually working at cross purposes at times and not in the best interest of the residents of our community. So this system basically is connecting those operational groups with each other so that if I had somebody come into the office, I can go into the system and type in Amy Bustamante. And if Amy was working with a group, it would tell me who she's working with. I then can connect with that person to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And we're in the process of making that. Eventually, this will shift to be organization-wide, where it won't only be what we're doing in the social service world. It'll be a broader customer CRM system where we're connecting people into all areas of our organization and then creating diving in with AI and chatbots and letting people move through our system more efficiently versus the manual process that we have.
You said if Amy is affiliated with a group, you would be able to see that.
So if Amy comes in and she's saying, I need all of these, let's assume Amy is 65 years old. And Amy is saying, I can't pay my rent, or I need mental health services, or I need these things. I can actually type her name in, and if she's working with senior services or leading poor, it'll tell me that she's working with them. Now, it's nuanced in that anything that is clinical, I can't see. I only see Amy's working with Brandy Queen. If it's not clinical, I have the ability to see it, but not everybody has the ability to see it. And so we're compartmentalized from a security perspective to make sure we're managing HIPAA and all of those issues.
Will it say like a program that she's associated with, or will it only say the case manager's name when you're working with?
Depends.
Yeah, like for example, I don't have the same level that Harold has.
Okay.
So when I do it, and I've had this happen already once. So if I talk to somebody, I can see, oh, they're working with mediation services, right? And and whoever entered so I can see they're working with Jasmine, but that's all I can see.
Yeah, but if I log in because I supervise clinicians, I can see the actual client notes, like that detail.
So it might be a good idea that when you assign the name, to put like a parenthesis of like abbreviations of department. So that way it's better.
It shows that. It shows which and right now we only have health and health we don't have everybody in yet. We got senior services and CYF and CNR mediation. That's all we have right now. So we're working on getting everybody in, and
That's where it's made in the.
well, Marcus put in the comments, Salesforce was a nightmare. You know, it is, I will say, I worked with Salesforce many years ago when I ran Intercambio. And back then it was hard. I think it's doing a lot better. I think it's improved and grown as a platform. So we are, yeah. So we're on that trajectory there to get as many of our city services integrated into Salesforce so that we can, it will be easy. If I talk to somebody, oh, hey, they're working with senior services, even if I can't see notes, I don't need to see notes, I can just reach out. It does have the chat function already. I can chat Brandy and say, hey, so-and-so came by with this issue. And then I just trust that Brandy will.
So then if you have, so this is state, like, so we can see throughout Colorado. So like say if I have homeless individuals getting services in Adams County.
So that's HMIS, that's not this. This is our local. Yeah, you're talking about HMIS, the state one. That's a whole different ballgame.
There are issues where this could connect into those systems. It's the entity itself that needs to give us permission to do it. So like we know there's duplication in Boulder County. We've been in about a 3-year-long battle, about 6-year-long getting permission because we do think that we could be better, but the other entities have to say yes. In this, I mean, we're eventually going to transition our resident portal for complaints and things like that into this. Because the other thing it lets me do is if you talk to me, I can send a message to Eliberto and it'll tell me whether or not he's responding. And it's going to keep the history of it. So if I say I need you to call person X in 2 days and he doesn't, it'll tell me. And he says, if he says I called him and then they say he didn't, I can look and go, no, he did, and here's this, because it's going to streamline.
To be more efficient.
Oh, yeah. And that then creates financial capacity. When we look at capital improvements, this gives you a sense of what we're doing just across the organization. And a lot of this is one-time dollars that we're putting into it. There are impact fees that are coming into this, and so we're restricted in how we use impact fees as well. So interesting point, like in Parks and Recreation, if we're pulling in impact fees from development, I can only use those funds for capacity increases. So I can't use it to remodel the rec center. I could use it to build the rec center. And so again, you're just getting a sense of how regulated each one of these funding sources can be. So when we look at our fund balance, you know, we're projecting that we're going to keep a 20.6% of our operating expenditures in fund balance. Our financial policy goal is 17 to 22. Based on where we're currently standing in this budget cycle, when I talk about how use tax is going down, what that really means for us is we have a Tabor reserve, an emergency reserve, a stabilization reserve. Now, where it gets weird is the Tabor reserves, I'm going to say somewhere around $8 million. If you use the Tabor reserve, you actually have to replenish it within the year you use it. So it's basically an unusable reserve, but we're required to have it by state law. So that had us create the emergency and the stabilization reserve so we could actually have a reserve that we can use. Our sales and use tax, we talked to the council, was so bad that when we presented to them, we said if it continues on its current trend, we're probably going to need to draw down $2 million of that stabilization reserve. That's why we created it. In this budget, we actually programmed in an additional $1 million at one time, so we would only reduce it by $1 million if we perform that way. You know, fingers crossed, we're starting to see some changes where it may not be as bad as it could have been, but we're watching that closely.
Where would you reduce?
What do you?
Like, where would you cut back on?
We wouldn't have to.
Okay.
That's why we're using stabilization. reserve.
Oh, because you would just pull out.
Yeah, I pull
And
out of the fund
replenish.
balance and then we would replenish it out of one-time funds
Okay.
next year to make sure that it's available, because depending on who we're talking to, outside of very specific projects that are at certain points in the development process or in their design and financing process, there's a thought that we could probably be in this world for 3 to 5 years. It takes that long for, the private side to really, spin up their engine and move, and it could be sooner. So we are seeing projects, but they're very specific and industry specific in terms of what they're trying to achieve. So we wanted to make sure we had stabilization reserve in case this kind of continue to trend in that way. Talked about most of these. We made some changes into incremental development revenue, and recreation actually for the first time since COVID hit 80% cost recovery. So you actually will see a level 2 request in recreation, but it's related to the revenue that they're generating. So it's kind of that restricted fund within the general fund. So they have a financial policy requirement of an 80% cost recovery. So that means for every dollar, they have to recover 80 cents. They really got hammered in COVID. And so we made some changes to some things that didn't make sense. So for example, recreation was eating the cost of the rec center memberships that we do for employee wellness to reduce our insurance expense. That really should have historically been a cost with the employee health and wellness fund. So we funded it out of that, and then they're just doing better. And then they made an adjustment to, we know that our summer daycare programs, literally they would fill in a day. So we actually put in the numbers to create an additional summer day recreation daycare program or summer camp program. And when we did the analogy on it, when we did the analysis on it, it actually was going to generate an additional 100,000 even after expenses. So in that case, we did fund those requests because they were generating the revenue to fund it. And so now we're kind of going through our implementation timeline. And if you're really curious about budget, there's about 3 hours from what was that, the 2nd of September? There's about 3.5 hours of presentations there. We had about 45 minutes last night. We'll have another couple, 2 to 3 hours next week, going through the individual funds in our capital improvement plan. So what does this mean for you? You all get 3% of the revenues that are budgeted within the general fund. You're actually going to see a relatively small increase because of, what is this?
This is what we had last year. This is the increase.
Yeah, so you're going to see about 173,000 more this year than you did last year. That's really the result of, everything I talked about, on the revenue side. Same issues in the county right now. We all talked about this yesterday as well, because we're all facing the same challenges. So that's a 30,000 foot presentation.
That's good news.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
You're not cutting our budget.
Yeah, that would have been, it would have been flat at best had we not carried some of the money over. So yeah, it could have been worse.
Yeah, I will say though, just so you all know, just like last year, the amount of requests are about close to $1 million over what we'll probably have.
Yeah.
When it all boils down.
Yeah, something I didn't talk about. I mentioned that the public safety fund was the hardest hit. So when we think about sales and use tax, we have public safety fund, the transportation fund, the public safety transportation, the public improvement fund, and the open space fund. that funding source is solely sales and use tax.
Wow.
And so they are experiencing flat revenue coming into next year. Now, each one of those funds are different. So the transportation fund, we have the ability to adjust based on capital expenses because it's so heavy on the capital side. Open space, similar, and they have money that they use for acquisition, not as heavy in personnel. The public safety fund, very heavy in personnel, and we have a building that is the gift that keeps on giving to us. And we're lucky the clock tower didn't fall in on itself. And so we had to be really careful with that in terms of how we were balancing it. So we actually had to come in and take higher cost positions in the public safety fund and absorb those in the general fund and shift the lower cost positions into the public safety fund in order to balance that budget. Because we have more revenue sources coming into the general fund. So the public safety fund is one that really got us concerned over time, what that's going to look like. And we know we need more bodies when we look at our call volumes. And so that's something that we're really going to have to pay attention to. The council was like, well, we need to do something now. My answer was, let's not get too aggressive. Let's just see what happens over the next year, see what comes together. And then let's talk about how we need to approach that over time. But I don't want to be too rash in the decision making at this point, because the thing that we're seeing in this economic climate is, I'll say a few things. I think we're in a paradigm shift financially when you look at the economy as a whole. The question is it a short-term paradigm shift or is it a long-term paradigm shift? And you talk to 10 different economists, you'll get 10 different answers. And so we just want to be careful with that. But we do think we're seeing some fundamental changes in just the world and how people are looking at projects, what they're undertaking. And I think the biggest change in this is, so I've been a city manager now for 20 years. I've been in the city manager's office for 27. I have unfortunately gone through many different cycles. If you think about it and you kind of go, well, oh wait, that was a housing bubble, or the tech bubble before that. You then had COVID, which showed itself in different ways in different communities. This is one that is really almost man-made. In the sense that things that are driving the economy are related to decisions that people are making. So whether it's adjusting the residential and commercial ratios or tariffs, these are not things that the economy is creating. These are things that policy decisions are creating, which is kind of why, is it short term or is it long term? Because when the tech bubble bust, when it busted and when the housing bubble busted, we knew those were long term. This one's a little bit harder to wrap our arms around. So there you go. Any questions?
I have a question. So on July 4th, the federal government passed the big budget bill. And I know at the state level, there was a legislative session, a special session that took place because of the big budget shortfall. And at the state level, when that happened, did that shift your numbers and your expectations?
Yes and no. And I think it really depended on what we were looking at. And there was more of a direct connection at the state level than local level. We're far less dependent on federal revenues and what we're doing. So we were insulated a fair amount from it. There were very specific areas that we were concerned about. The housing choice voucher program was one that we were watching really close because we didn't know what they were going to do. They actually ended up funding that at the same level that they were previously funding. So we didn't lose any revenue in that, but we didn't gain any additional revenue. And so that is showing itself in a different way And then under HUD rules, and this is more of a housing authority issue, they have rent reasonableness that you have to do. So every year you evaluate what the rents are. And then based on that number, you push the rents up. So it's sort of a formulaic process. What this really means is that we are not issuing any new vouchers. And we're actually in shortfall because of some of the numbers that HUD presented. So we're actually having to reduce vouchers with attrition. So we have fewer housing choice vouchers that we're actually putting out, and we're uncertain as to when we'll ever be able to voucher up again in the future. It's directly dependent on whether or not they put more revenue in, or how that fits in with the rent reasonableness and what the natural increases are in rent in your community. And it's not just us. There are a large number of housing authorities that are in shortfall right now, and we're in the shortfall process. And then HUD requires you to create a series of steps that you have to start undertaking in order to qualify for the shortfall funding, up to and including removing people out of the voucher system. And it's kind of backwards in that you remove the oldest people who've been on the vouchers the longest, and you can't remove people over 65, people with disabilities, and so it narrows the pool of what you can do. So, but you have to have this whole plan in place. So that was one where we were seeing it. CBG obviously is one that we think is going to it got hit, and it will get hit again. And they're going back into the budget process, which we're gonna have to watch it again. I think the broader impacts are when you hear about things like Medicaid and things like that, and what is that? What is really the unfunded mandate associated with this? Unfunded mandates are something else we've had to deal with from both the federal and state level. So as the state balances its budget, typically falls to the local government. And so then we see expenses that we have to absorb because of those things, kind of like the marijuana revenue. And so, yeah, it's just going to continue. So that's where you hear a lot of conversations about growth in our community. And it's an interesting conversation. The reality is that municipal budgets across the nation are built on growth. And they're built on growth across all sectors. And when that starts slowing down, use tax, that starts shrinking our budgets. And so things like housing, economic development are really important to support programs like our Health and Human Service programs, because they benefit from the revenue generated from those activities. And so you can kind of see this at times when you look at Longmont and Boulder, because Boulder will tend to get in financial strength sooner than we will. And they're sort of encapsulated, and they're fully dependent on redevelopment versus we still have some natural growth occurring in our community. And that affects sales tax, because, I often hear we need more shopping. I'd agree with you. Retail right now is going through its own trials, and they kind of base their decisions on some key factors: traffic counts, rooftops, disposable income. And if you don't meet those requirements, they won't look at you. Costco is a great example. When we redeveloped Village at the Peaks, we were knocking on their door nonstop, and they're like, we're not going. All of a sudden, we met a threshold that fit Costco's profile. And then they told us there's only 2 locations we're going to. It's not like we could put them anywhere in the community. It's like 2 locations. And so they go through that process. So then that growth also feeds retail growth as well. So it's a convoluted economic system.
Yeah, Martha says she's never paid more for rent, groceries, or gas in her life. It's kind of scary.
So you said you're not issuing new housing vouchers, is that because you're issuing the same amount?
We're issuing less.
Oh, okay.
So,
So the same people, the people who already have them?
Yeah.
Do they, okay.
so when people, in some ways it's they pour it out. So they, let's say they pour it out to Houston, or some people just, some people lose their vouchers. As those vouchers are freeing up, they're just not issuing them.
Oh, wait, wait, wait.
To cover the costs.
There's, so it's a weird thing, right? So HUD will tell you, they tell us, you have 520 vouchers. Numerically we do, but financially we don't. It's based on the amount of money they give.
Mhm.
So we're actually losing filled vouchers.
Because they have a formula for what it's supposed to cost, and that formula may or may not cover the actual cost in the area.
So, if rents are higher, one voucher's worth of money, we're having to pay a little bit more, then that means maybe we're spending 1.3 vouchers worth of money to fund one voucher. That means we can't fully fund the second. More affordable now.
Well, that's where it gets hard too. So if you look at LIHTC housing, one of the things you need in order to make that go financially is you need project-based vouchers.
Which come from the same pool.
It comes from the same pool, so
Yeah, yeah.
it becomes a challenge, and that's where the lending institutions start sliding in as well, because now you're looking at what is the viability of getting the financing to build a project, and so that starts changing the world, because if you're not meeting their lending requirements, let's say somebody came in and said, we want to build 100 units and we want to build 20 affordable. If it doesn't pass the financing model, then they don't get the debt that they need to build the project. And so there's virtually no affordable housing being considered.
We have no new projects in the pipeline,
Yeah.
aside from the ones we already knew about. And yeah, in general, as the economy is uncertain or as there's more chaos, lenders get less flexible, not more flexible. They kind of freeze up, their threshold go higher because they're more risk adverse. And so it's even harder to get financing when
And,
it's kind of a feedback.
With the bankers, we
Yeah.
pulled back right away.
yeah, so Martha put in and this is true, right? Or places worth the cost of the voucher. She's got 2 folks she's working with that have vouchers that can't be used and can't be placed. And you only get a certain amount of time to, let's say you get a voucher, you only get a certain amount of time to actually to find a place that will accept it, right? And if you
Yeah.
don't, then you lose it.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge too, is finding out either private landlord, corporate landlord.
Sure, they should apply to Ascent. They have HCBs as clients.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you have them apply to Ascent when they.
Overstaffing, yeah, when that opens.
So as we start to go into like some harder times with just loss of funding for some of our key nonprofits and other supports for our community, have we thought about reducing the amount of nonprofits that we're funding and funding just some of the core ones and not duplicating the
We've had,
amount of nonprofits that we're funding?
we've had those conversations since last year, and the board decided not to limit. I mean, we can do it for 2027. I think at this point it's a little bit difficult for 2026, but we've had those conversations since 2024.
Well, and I think as we do the application process, like there's still
Yeah,
a chance to, we're still gonna look at these nonprofits and say who's.
And your scores?
Yeah.
yeah, and your scores
Yeah, the
determine that, but at this point, we can't,
Yeah,
You
we
know,
wouldn't be able to narrow that.
we couldn't change the process because we're in the middle of the process. That decision needs to be made in January, February, March of next year, 2027.
Part of it is we made the recommendation to council. This year is so crazy. Do we really want to change it right now, or do we want to try to get a little bit more certainty for 26? Because if you would have moved here and it changed dramatically, then would you have wanted to say maybe we do a little something different? And I think that's why you all have flexibility in your decision-making process where you can still conceptually take that approach. We're just not leading with that approach. And I honestly think there may be a point where we need a joint board session with the council to kind of talk through this.
Yeah.
Because
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, we could
did
do that
make
next year, yeah.
We made the commitment to council that we would bring that back next year for consideration.
And we're gonna have a new council as well next year too.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking like, just a lot of the duplicative services. Are we truly meeting a need in the community by funding so many nonprofits that are doing the same type of
Yeah.
work? And so how much further would our dollar go?
We can become way more prescriptive,
Well, And I think of like EFA, right? Like Boulder funds EFA pretty significantly, and EFA is really able to make a big impact in the community because of it. And so like, how would that look if we kind of followed some of those same models, like put more dollars in one organization that's doing specific things? So that way we can, like Harold was saying, like you guys are looking at in the city, streamlining and making sure we're pushing people.
I think that would be a council and board conversation, because that's changing policy and how we've done it for the last 20-some years. But we can definitely have that conversation for sure.
I mean, it's even things like, we've talked about it, where people are doing the same thing. What point is there a merger conversation?
And that's something I was looking at too. I seen a documentary out of Houston talking about their homeless population, and they ended up restricting their funding to only, so that for organizations could only apply for it if they showed that they were collaborating with the other organizations to a certain
And
extent.
that's already in place here. We in 2017, council made that decision, right? So they have to agree to be part of HSBC. They have to follow the HSBC model, because there are other agencies that are doing similar stuff but are not part of HSBC, and they're not getting funded by us.
And on the nonprofit side, I think we were really clear that that's what we're looking for in applications is are they leveraging their resources?
That's what that collaboration question that we had.
Collaboration, Councilmember Chris called it service stacking. So I think that there's the opportunity for this board to really look at those applications through that lens and make recommendations based on that. And I think that will resonate with council because they were clear on when they said this isn't the time to make the changes this year with the volatility in our economy, but we do want to hear more about this. And so as we take those recommendations to council in December to say this really was the lens that our board looked at in providing these recommendations. And I think
And this board too made a decision, like we had suggested different models, and this board made a decision in late March or one of our special meetings in April, say, we're not going to change it this year, which is fine, and that's totally fine. But we have had the conversation, and we'll continue to have the conversation. And it may be time for a joint council and board to really look at, do we narrow who we fund? Do we become more prescriptive as a city, saying, hey, these are the specific services that we want, that we know are successful, and this is what we're going to fund, right? We can do that, but I think it'll take a policy change, and we'll need the council to step in and say that. Yeah. And Katie made a comment, and it's true, she made a comment on the chat saying we can't bait and switch. Without the application as it is, we can't.
Yeah, no, I'm not thinking about it this year. I'm just thinking like moving forward. It's like we've heard comments that people are fairly.
Yes.
If we continue to fund these little bits here and there to each nonprofit, we're doing a disservice for the community. And so, and then, and nonprofits are continuing to struggle, and we might lose some of our core nonprofits that actually do impact residents' lives. So, and then, so if we do fund, so after this funding decision, we find out like who scored what, if there's left over.
There isn't any left over.
Okay.
But we have had leftover in the past.
Okay.
I think before you came on the board, so Chiquita was still on the board. So we have had, and what we've done is the staff has created suggestions along with the help with the board. We've gone back to council and said, council, because of the way the formula worked, we had X left over. Here are the suggestions from the board. What do you think, right? And so I've done it at least once since I started with the city 7 years. This is my 7th year. It's happened just once. Because there's $1 million more in requests than there is in amount to, I doubt that'll happen. But if it does, that's the way that we handled it in the past.
So could we treat it kind of like a council contingency as like an emergency fund and?
You could, yeah, I just don't think you're gonna
And
get there,
then
but
if organizations like El Comite, which recently came up and asked for costs for an attorney, or other organizations, maybe like our center is seeing an increase in evictions or something like that, that then we can vote as a board to approve that, would that be
yeah,
something?
if there is that funding, yes, we'll see. I just don't know. Again, it's only happened once, in my time here. And we could bring that back to council and say, council, there's $300,000 left. And this is how the board thinks we should use it. So, it's, yeah.
Yeah, there's some hard things coming forward. I mean, we've been talking about, our unhoused community and, we're putting about 1.4
So
million.
from our funding, not including police,
Just saying,
yeah, our funding in 2025, we did 1.2, and then the other 1.4 went to the human services agency.
But in aggregate, we're, let's say 1.5. I think there's more when you think of all the other departments.
Right.
When you look at that and the time spent.
Right. The interesting piece is we have nothing for in-house families in this.
No,
Just the family hoteling program, that's the
Just
only.
it. And so, we all, our in-house population is not monolithic.
No.
And, right now, we're putting our funding in kind of, if I look at that box on something else and you say, low acuity to high acuity, and then it's a more complicated diagram, and then you take individuals and family, what you will find is the bulk of our funding is going into the highest acuity individuals, families. And so there's things, and we know there's a problem.
and are those considered high risk?
Yeah.
Are
Sure.
those, like, a lot of people consider families with children, seniors and people with disability, the priority population?
So Martha, so to your point about, winter is coming, this is why we do have the family hoteling, because there is no inclement shelter weather for families.
Where does that hoteling come, who distributes that?
So we have a contract with the Country Wood, and if Amy and I work to get, if there, whenever inclement weather comes in and it's called, and somebody says, hey, there's this family, we housed, I think we did 30 inclement weather nights this winter. As long as the hotel's willing, and we're looking for a second hotel too to have more capacity, but it's only inclement weather, right? It's only inclement weather.
Only very hot.
And but not to get too, I mean, another one is how do you invest more in eviction prevention, because it's easier to
Keep a family.
keep a family housed, they're not keep them housed. And so you have all of these things, and then you have,
We had Empress, that would be nice.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
why we're using our clinical resources, right?
That brings it real nice.
Empress would be nice.
so then you then start expanding and you go into, I could keep going.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the challenge in this is because behind it, there's not enough revenue, which I kind of said when I talked about we're working on a lot of projects.
Yeah.
We clearly know that the things that we're working on actually could significantly change, one of them in particular, could significantly change the city's financial position immediately. Depending on how it comes together, I could say secure it for the next 5+ years.
Right.
And so it then benefits health and human service funding, open space funding, public safety funding. I mean, I can just go through this. And so that's where we're also trying to spend some time as staff really focusing on some of these things so that we can really create some fundamental shifts from a revenue perspective.
Yeah, and I think that would be a good idea for us to get with council or whoever to meet and just talk about like what the future looks
Yeah.
like, because
I've been, yeah,
like
that'd be
not
great.
only is it gonna be important to increase the funding, but it's gonna be important to make sure that we're utilizing that funding most efficiently.
Yeah.
Within the programs, and so
Yeah,
I'm just thinking about like your hoteling, like how could we leverage like State Green Valley, Luis Chavez does a lot of hoteling for families. How, versus you guys using your time for that, how do we work with the school district to have
Well, we
them
tried to-
distribute the hoteling, you
Yeah,
know?
we tried to load it off on agencies, but people don't want the
They didn't want
liability.
to do it.
Yeah,
So
so
there's a lot of liability with
so I have to work with,
damages.
yeah. I
Or
have-
even like emergency family assistance, and they have it out here in Longmont. They just brought on a housing resource liaison that works just with Boulder. How could some of these funds be utilized maybe for the administrative position and to distribute out housing, homeless resource navigation for families with children? And so just thinking about like, how do we streamline and use those bucks? But just, I was just thinking.
Yeah, I think it's worth a conversation. And
The hoteling, is there a financial cap on
yeah, we don't have unlimited funds.
it? Yeah, so how do you, I mean, have you ever come close to it? No, okay.
So I need to run. Any more questions for me?
Why haven't you?
What are you-
That project I was telling you about, I started at 11 and we didn't get to 2:30 or 3, so. And it's running to them.
Well, we'll be here for the.
Thank you, Harold.
Thank you, Harold.
Thank you. Happy to come back if y'all ever want to.
Okay.
Let me know.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, I could feel my blood sugar starting. People eat lunch, so it's no big deal, but if I don't eat.
Getting late though.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so. That was the report from City Manager Harold.
I think that's the only
And then I
major,
think other business,
anybody have any other business?
I have other business. I have one other business kind of call out to the board members. You go first. You go first.
Mine's quick. I'm just trying to, on the whole application stuff, because I'm first year trying to figure this out. And I saw the emails, because we're not using Foundo, we're doing it on paper.
Yeah.
I saw the emails from Amy. Am I missing the applications?
You shouldn't be, she should have.
Because I have the evaluation forms, but what am I missing?
She sent them in zip files.
Yeah.
Because I think it feels like I'm missing.
I feel the same way.
I think I
Yeah,
feel
I
like
think
missing a lot of it.
they're zipped up. They were a little bit to access. So I do think do you only have the one pagers? The one page evaluation? Because you should be able to see a zip file that will open and you'll see 6 PDFs with however many agencies in this whatever category it is. Have you seen that? It was
Well,
a little thick.
I thought I got into it, but
The zip files were a little tricky. And the
Okay.
the applications are cumbersome. I thought.
And all of them would be in there as PDFs.
Did you see the?
Because there's so many, I have to put them in a zip file.
Yeah, I was. That's what
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
Yes.
When people put in zip file, yeah.
Put in nutrition.
okay.
Let's see what you're seeing. And then you just go through it, right?
I clicked on the ones.
And they're not gonna be in order in there, like the agenda.
So I was-
Where the-
You can print it out if you want.
Print it out if you want to. Yeah.
It's in this OneDrive.
Okay.
And I looked in there, I had all these other, I'm like, okay.
But yeah,
I'm good.
Providence has been a disaster this year. We've talked to Boulder about it, we're gonna meet with Providence to try and.
We need a refund.
Yeah.
We've got-
And Eliberto.
Katie,
Yeah, the other thing I would just say to Mark is what you said to me yesterday, which is which sections to really largely ignore. Because I think that the applications are a little clumsy in that, you're really only focused on the program. And they're very exhaustive. And the thing that I thought was sort of annoying about them is that all the examples are in every one. So you kind of have to make sure you're actually reading substance from the applicant, because there's all this just repetitious kind of
Yeah.
irrelevant text. So I just, I think Eliberto, when you reminded me yesterday, just ignore everything else. That was helpful. So I would just encourage a reminder on that.
Evaluating the agency side. You all don't have to, I mean, you're welcome to read whatever you want to read on the application. But my job is to look at the agency side. You all look at the program side. So I'm looking at agency financial health. I'm looking at agency strategic planning. I'm looking at all of those at that level. You all are looking at, does this program, the program rationale, the program description, all of the program stuff, does it, in your mind, does it fit what we're trying to accomplish here in Longmont? Right? And you score it accordingly. If you don't think it's something that, this really doesn't really help Longmont as much as I wish it would, then you score it lower. Simple as that.
Score it lower.
Score it lower. Right? So that's your job.
The other
Yes,
thing
Katie.
the other thing I would appreciate some perspective on, because I struggled with this yesterday, was when an applicant appears not to be substantially supporting Longmont and or they're saying, even if they're only requesting a portion of their funds, as an example, if the majority of their work is in Boulder,
And you score them accordingly.
I struggled with it. I just want to make sure I understood that was a legitimate concern.
Yes, you can score them 1, 2, and that is fine. That's your job, right? Your job is, does this program, so a couple of things. One, does it impact Longmont? And 2, do you believe in its efficacy, right? Do you believe this is a good program doing good services, right? Because there are many programs that are specific to Longmont, but you may not agree with it, or you may not think that that is an effective program. Again, that's every individual board member gets to make that decision in their scoring.
And I'm sure Leo's input was really helpful.
I did send the 3 people that are evaluating. I did send them Leo's input. So he joined us for the hearing. He is a senior services resource advisor working with LHA. So.
I was like, Leo.
Yes, he is. Yeah. So anything else on that other business from Mark? Okay, we're good. All right, Crystal, you got the floor.
Well, no, this just kind of goes into what I wanted to say. So I apologize that I haven't been here the last 2 weeks. I've been extremely busy. But 2, I just wanted to kind of highlight the urgency in the community right now with some of these organizations and the needs that we're seeing. And this funding cycle, I don't have a whole lot of applications. And so thank you all for taking a lot of them on with the campaign and everything. I'm super busy, but what I want to say is please, I'm just calling like an urgency out to the board members, like please look at it with a critical eye and make sure that we're funding for organizations that you feel are really meeting the need of the community or meeting the need of the Longmont community, most importantly, and some of those most vulnerable in our community. My hope is that we do our due diligence and fund those that are most important, that are not duplicative services, that have the best outcomes, that are meeting the scoring that we've set forth. And hopefully at the end of it, we will have some money for some cushion to provide to other organizations in the event of an emergency. Is my hope, is what I would like to see as the chair, especially just knowing what I know about what's coming down the pipeline. And so this is, if there was any moment that these application scoring was important, I think this is one of the biggest ones that I would say throughout my time here that I feel the most urgency for. So I just wanted to state that.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your hard work.
I think it's not actually other business, it's already there. I just want to thank the board. We just had
How many?
52, I think.
62 total.
Yeah. So I just want to thank the board. So last night was our first hearing. It was the housing hearings, and the board suggested that we change the format to where we allow them to tell the story before we ask questions. I thought it went amazing. I thought it was, for Martha and Nancy was done. Katie, she wouldn't know because this is her first, but I thought it was a totally different vibe. Martha, I don't know if you want to speak to it. Just typing. Okay, that's good. So yeah, Cassie, I just thought it was.
It was really, really good.
So I'm sorry, say what's different about it?
So in the first time you did it, Jeffrey, we gave them the last 5 minutes to share anything they wanted to.
Uh-huh.
This year, the board recommended, why don't we let them tell their story first? And then we ask questions.
Okay.
And I thought it was, yeah.
5 minutes, I get to the point, how is this money gonna be used, what kind of impact you're gonna make, and then we follow up with questions.
Yeah, because once they made the presentation, you could ask much more questions.
Yeah.
And you felt,
That makes sense.
you knew a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It felt better.
Is we each getting 15? 15 minutes?
Yeah. Sometimes we go over, you know.
2 minutes.
One had a PowerPoint, not, and I can. That's fine.
Yeah.
People have been asking me, I said, we don't need the formal presentation. If you want to, you can, but it's not needed. It's just really a conversation. And I just thought that this new format is working out well. Okay, so.
And the PowerPoint presentation, like when they were going through, like, but then at the end will be as questions. It really came along.
And so remind me, the due date is what? It's October, late October.
So our meeting, I think is November. No, yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to tell me like 3 weeks before.
October 31st.
Yeah, we can get it back to.
Halloween.
Yeah, for Halloween, that would be great. I mean, honestly, our meeting is gonna be
You don't get candy.
November
There you go.
13th. If you get to me by November 7th, that's fine, but at least two.
The chance to double check numbers and to make sure that.
It should be easier this year.
So that way, at least we're still like.
Yeah.
We send them all back to you,
Yeah, send them in,
Mhm.
just as they came.
just fill them in, save them and send them.
Well, the PDFs, you can go in there that way, make changes.
The PDF.
The Excel document.
Are you right about-
That should be an Excel, but you download them in a PDF.
Either you edit them there, or they could
This.
Like,
You don't need to do what I'm gonna do.
Or you.
Do yours.
Because y'all go underwater.
Do we sound like we're underwater?
Not today.
Oh, no, today, I wonder what it was.
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday when Katie and Amy were here, yes, the sound wasn't great because Katie and Amy. So, and that actually, good reminder. So these meetings are here, our regular meetings. Our hearings, and Mark and Katie, my apologies. I just assumed that you somehow, most of us got this. Those are all virtual.
You could just.
Yeah.
Unless you want to come in.
But I do them here just because it makes sense for me to do them here, but you all are welcome to do them virtual.
Alberto, is there?
So just like the board meetings.
Yeah, you could.
I mean, I think it's fine.
Full amount. You had a coffee shop or something.
Yeah.
But the people presenting were on,
Virtual.
they were very.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's no fun.
Yeah.
We used to not here. So let me tell you, I used to go fight. And they were all in person. And I remember one year they had it at the senior center. And we were all of us agencies were sitting out there talking to each other, waiting. It felt like you're going into interrogation.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because I used to fight when I was.
Wait,
I think it's good, but maybe as long as everyone's on Zoom, which I should have been, I just didn't know.
Yeah, yes, Jeffrey.
Is there any item on the October?
We probably won't have a meeting.
Oh, we're gonna cancel next one. Okay.
Yeah. We did. Yeah, I actually wanted to cancel it. We've been promising you, Harold, and he had been working on budget for a long time, and so we wanted. Yeah, so we'll probably cancel the October meeting because really we're gonna be in the midst of this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's on the,
Okay.
Okay, well, do we have any other business for the board Are we gonna be accepting applications for new board members or when
Yeah.
does that happen?
So I just got an email, I believe it opens October 8th. So I think some of you may need to reapply, I forget, I would need to go back and look.
It's me when I'm like,
You're one of them, I think there's like, I think Robert and a few, and Alejandro. And yeah,
Can't get rid of me yet.
so yeah, it opens October 8th, so we'll make sure that we send you the
will you send us I already have the link, I got it from Michelle. But if you could send us the link, because I think someone is interested in joining.
Yeah, so if we were to meet, and I'm kind of thinking about it.
There's one opening, right?
No, well, people have to reapply. I think the only thing to think about is if we meet in October, if we need to meet in October, is to discuss how, because I think there's changes coming from the city clerk on the interview process, so we gotta figure that out.
Oh, really?
And we might have to bring it back to you all about that, because
Dance contest or what? Yeah.
yeah. So we'll see what they say. I haven't read.
That in our interviews. They're like, interpretive dance.
So you must be a good dancer then.
We'll keep the board up to date on that.
Okay,
Okay?
perfect. All right, well, I will go ahead and move to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second? All right, Kathy second. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect.
So Martha talked about, she told that Robert's okay. He came and picked up his stuff. I think he came and picked up all his paperwork yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's today? Tuesday.
Tuesday, he came on Tuesday and picked up his stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, all right, thank you all.
Okay. Yeah.